Hey guys, Elic119 here with a new video on the new champion Zac, the secret weapon. This video focuses on how to play Zac in the jungle and touches up on the utility of his abilities. Because all of Zac's abilities are area of effect, he excels at jungling with a rather quick clear time as well as having a gap closer with some CC, allowing him to gank easily too. Because Zac doesn't use mana, it's kind of the player's choice on whether or not to start red and go for an early gank or to take the usual blue buff route and go for the cooldown reduction. For the sake of this video, I start at blue buff since I haven't decided whether or not to start elsewhere. However, if you really wanted to, you could start at Rays or Wolves and make your own path. The cool thing about Zac's abilities are that they allow the player to decide exactly what he or she wants to do and is flexible to each player's playstyle. What makes Zac so unique and such a good jungler, other than the fact that he is all area of effect attacks, is the first part of his passive. Zac's abilities cost % current health, and Zac's passive causes Zac to leave pieces of himself on the ground when he uses abilities, and those pieces can be picked back up and healing him for 4% of his max health. Basically, after a certain point, your passive max health regeneration will be greater than the % current health your moves take to allow you to have natural sustain. A trick to use in the jungle when playing Zac is to stand in the corner of the jungle monster's areas so his blobs of health fall closer to Zac and are not scattered, making it much easier to pick up the health without moving around and clicking so much. Another trick that I use is pretty risky, but it has had good results in the past, and that is to stay low health. By staying low health, your passive heals you for more than you lose and you're self-sustaining, thus lasting longer in the jungle. When you're ready to gank is when you'd want to use your health potions if you choose to use this tactic. And obviously, be careful when you're doing this, as it does attract enemy junglers. Zac's jungle build should be slightly tanky with a little AP for the best results, but obviously you can decide whether you should go full tank if your team needs it, or full AP if you already have a pretty tanky team. The benefit of going tanky is that Zac becomes a CC machine and has natural damage, so you still have presence in teamfights, while going full AP allows high damage outputs in teamfights and even faster clear times. Either way you go, the first item you're going to want to grab on Zac is definitely Spell Vamp, so that you're not literally killing yourself in teamfights, and you have an option of whether or not to grab your health blobs. Before grabbing Spell Vamp, getting the blobs is a must. A couple cool little things about Zac that you might notice in this video or may have already read are that as Zac gets lower and lower health, his model size actually gets smaller and smaller respectively. Another cool thing that you might notice is when Zac recalls, he bounces on the ground and high up into the air upon returning to the base. Animations on returning are relatively new at this point, and Zac is the first to contain that much movement. Lastly, Zac stands for Zon Amorphous Combatant and is the first champion claiming the spotlight in the new lore Riot created based in a place called Zon. Moving on to Zac's utility and abilities, I'll touch upon his moves and show them in action. In addition to the self-sustain mentioned earlier, Zac has a second part to his passive called Cell Division. When Zac dies, he splits into 4 blobs. These blobs will then attempt to reform over a short duration, and if any survive, Zac revives with a percentage of his max health based on the number of remaining blobs. You might want to note this has a 5-minute cooldown. Taking a look at Zac's Q, it's called Stretching Strike. When cast, Zac stretches his arms out, damaging and slowing enemies. Stretching Strike is a low-range attack with a medium cooldown, costs 8% of his current health, and it's used mainly for its utility. This move is particularly useful when ganking and when used in sync with Elastic Slingshot. Has a 0.5 AP ratio and should be maxed second. Zac's W is called Unstable Matter. Unstable Matter is a low-range, low cooldown area of effect attack costing 4% of his current health, but it deals flat damage as well as % max health ranging from 4 to 6% based on level. Has an AP ratio of plus 1% per 50 ability power, and it's your main jungling move and it should be maxed first. Zac's most useful move is probably his E, which is Elastic Slingshot. Using it causes Zac to aim in the direction of your cursor and charge for up to 1 second, increasing the range of the attack the longer he charges. This is a high range, high cooldown attack which deals damage upon landing as well as knocking enemies back for half a second. Knockback is quite useful when ganking, especially if you can get behind them and knock them closer towards your allies. It's used for engaging, ganking, escaping, and its crowd control. Keep in mind that Zac is immobilized while Elastic Slingshot is charging, so make sure you have enough time to cast it, and take a point in this at level 3 and max it last. Lastly, Zac's ultimate is called Let's Bounce. When used, Zac bounces into the air, immediately knocking up, slowing, and damaging nearby enemies, then continues to bounce 3 additional times, gaining speed with each bounce. Note that enemies can only be knocked up and slowed once and take less damage with each subsequent hit. This ability is used in large teamfights for its high CC, or it can be used as a chaser or escape. Also, to make it a little bit more fun, it confuses the crap out of your enemies when you use it. Initiating with Elastic Slingshot, slowing your enemies with Stretching Strike, popping off Unstable Matter, and even maybe your ultimate, Zac dominates large team fights and groups, but to be quite honest, Zac is one of the first champions in a while that I consider fairly balanced. He's a good jungler with CC, but his ratios are too low to carry a game, so you probably won't be seeing any 1v5 pentakills anytime soon. However, don't think that means he's weak. His presence in teamfights is incredible, and overall he's a very fun character. That sums up this jungle intro and champion spotlight for Zac. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to message me. Otherwise, please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe for more fresh content.